The Best of T2C Compilations, Episodes 26 through 28. Episode 26, Beyond the Bid, Strategic Success in Government Contracting. Segment 4, Beyond the Basics, Overlooked Marketing Strategies.
But let's go beyond the basics about and talk more on overlooked marketing strategies. Many contractors focus primarily on their proposals, their presentations, their CAPE statements. But what are some overlooked marketing strategies that you can provide that will help companies have a competitive edge in government contracting?
Understand your customer base, understand where they go for information, live and virtual. Um, so, couple of things. There are a bunch of niche events in our market, not the great big things that I call them the People magazine things, where CIOs are going to show up and you have a photo op and
Right.
ooh ah, but it buys you nothing and costs you a lot. Um,
Yes.
a week or so back, Mike Smoyer of Digital Government Institute did his annual 930 Gov. He focuses on 5 IT tracks, very specific, brings in great government speakers to talk about this, offers CEUs, and he attracts between 800 and 1,000 government
Wow.
employees, frontline managers every year. So PMs, IT pros, they're getting CEUs, and from a vendor perspective, there is an exhibit hall. There's no big exhibits. It's all tabletop. It's all equal. You can buy 2 tables if you want a big booth, right? But
Right.
uh, you have the opportunity for 8 hours to focus on specific IT issues, hopefully related to what you do, and meet the people who are using this, frontline personnel. Those are the people you really need to meet and influence. So
Yep.
little niche things like that. White papers and case studies still work. They have worked forever. They're still gonna. But writing stuff and getting it delivered, getting it read are 2 different things. So what venues can you leverage to get it read? Yeah, you can put it on LinkedIn, but again, if you don't have anybody
Right.
downloading it or reading it, what's the point? So, um, boy, I had a few other thoughts on this. What the heck were they? Um, oh Lord.
But you were talking about like white papers
Think
and case studies. Um,
part, partnering. We have
ah,
a variety of companies out there that host events. We have the trade pubs that host events. We have, the integrators or aggregators like Carasoft, Imix, and DLT that host events. We have solo companies that host events. A couple of years ago, Zscaler held its first public sector summit down at the Reagan Center, and they got they exceeded their goals for doing it, but they busted their butts to get it done. So that was fun. I actually attended the first one I missed last year. Um, you can, but hosting your own events means devoting a ton of your people time and people knowledge to get it started, to get it rolling. So partnering with an outside partner is key. Back in the 90s, I evolved a strategy called the one book buy. So back then, the publications hosted events. They had a bunch of newsletters, and they had the advertising, right? So it for smaller and medium sized companies, you don't have the budgets of Northrop and GDIT. So what can you do? I suggested to, and I had my clients do this, to focus on the publication that best served your market and bundle services that they could provide you, and then negotiate a price so you get more bang for your buck.
interesting.
Um, that it's still done, but government executive has rolled up so much stuff that it's pretty ridiculous. But Carasoft has a complete marketing program for all of their partners. If you want to spend, I don't think they're going to negotiate the price though, but they can pretty much guarantee you an audience because their marketing team and their
Yeah.
reach into the market is second to none.
It's
And then
insane, right? Like they're everywhere. They are a marketing beast.
they are,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, they really
and
are.
Craig is the best. Say Craig Abod, the CEO of Carasoft, is from my perspective the best salesperson this market has ever seen. I watched him back at Falcon Microsystems when that company was selling SGI workstations to the government, and it was the
Mhm.
most profitable division of Falcon, even though they had the exclusive Apple agreement at the time as well. So he's always been a sales monster. His ability to leverage marketing when he started Carasoft has been and remains extraordinary. And no outside investment. They're going to be like $15 billion this year. It's insane, but it's totally fun to watch. And I have several clients who have been partners with Carasoft, and helping them understand the landscape there and how they can leverage it, even for something as simple as a webinar. Simple
Right.
as a webinar,
Yeah.
right? Webinars are not simple. It's easy to do a crappy one, it's hard to do a good one. And they will walk you through the process, they'll handhold you through the process, and then they'll help you populate the webinar. And then you have this evergreen tool out there where
Yep.
you can aim people. Um, so knowing the landscape and who you can leverage and who you shouldn't leverage is absolutely key if you're going to succeed here. And picking a wrong partner, picking a wrong event can deplete your wallet quickly. And again, so I had conversations recently with a company that was leaning towards one of the expensive events where they would have no overt presence,
Yeah.
and it was again more photo op than substance. So I explained to them what they could do incrementally with that money to meet people on the front lines and have an impact. But sometimes the executives are just going to say, "Hey, I met with these people. They love me. They're going to do this and that for us," and their wallet's empty. Um, so have criteria for every single marketing tool that you're going to deploy, and make sure you get buy off from BD, from sales, from marketing, and then you go to the execs and say, this is what we collectively think we
Yeah.
should be doing.
I think it's important to be really deliberate. And I think you and I know people who they're out every day of the week. It's great. It's very flashy, like the company or their page is just flashed with, drinks galore, evening gowns, or, I'm here and I'm there. And I kind of cringe sometimes when I have a lot of events, and it just so happens that when I come back to DC, I pack all of them together. So it does
Mhm.
look like I'm out all the time and I do this, but like I'm not. I am very selective when people are like, "Hey, am I going to see you here?" And I was like, "No, that's really not my bag. Like that's not like I'm not quite sure why I would be there except for if you wanted to see me. That's great, and it's great to be seen. But like you said, there's an event or something going on every day of the week. Some of them are free, most of them cost something, and it's your time too. So time is money. Making that effort too. It's not like, oh, I've got an open block in my calendar. I'll just go do that. Well, that's an open block. You could have been doing something else, either reading
Right.
and educating yourself or, whatever. So,
And
but
we
but
don't have
anyway,
unlimited time.
no, we don't.
Yeah.
Um,
The other thing that amuses me greatly is the number of awards out there. I mean, there's awards for people who didn't win awards last week. They're coming out of all kinds of organizations, and you and I have both won a couple of awards, but the ones I got are peer related awards, which is very cool. I didn't have to spend money to advertise. I think the greatest one I ever received, the one that impressed me most, B2B Magazine was a publication focused on business marketing. It was published in the 80s, 90s, and up to the early mid 2000s. And every year they did a top 100 business marketers in the country. And usually half of that list or more was people who spent a lot of money advertising.
Yeah.
I
It's the
made the
pay
cut
type
in
of,
top 100.
well, that's
Yeah,
great. You didn't have to
I
pay.
made the cut in 2008. So,
Yeah. No, I know there are a lot of beauty pageant awards and stuff, so I get that. I've received a few of those myself, and then there are some where it's like you said, when it's from your peers and it's something that is from an organization or a group of, people that you highly respect you, then those are the ones that, I really cherish and like.
Episode 27, Navigating the GovCon Consulting Maze. Segment 2, Consultants versus Outsourced Services.
Which is consultants versus outsourced services. They sound the same. I think people may use those terms kind of interchangeably, but like, how do you differentiate between hiring a consultant and outsourcing your services? And when might each be the better choice in GovCon?
Great question. And I love that question. It is so important. Time and again, imagine a line, draw a spectrum, draw a line in front of you, sketch it out. Okay. And on the left-hand end, you want to write, do it yourself. And on the right-hand end, you want to write, done for you. And the middle space is done with you. Okay. And so, because consultants work with their clients in a lot of different ways, okay, I want you to imagine consultants kind of fading in from the left, okay? Outsourced services fade in from the right and done for you. And there's a lot of crossover in the middle. The key factor to consider is whether you want to learn to do a thing, and that can involve a consultant that is coaching groups of individuals or helping you build internal capacity to do a thing, or get ongoing single situation advice, or learn how to do something better with more confidence. All of those are closer to the left-hand end of the spectrum. You can't do it yourself, and you want a little help, maybe a little more help. And with the benefit of somebody who, as you mentioned before, has a lot of outside relevant perspective and experience. Or you may decide you want to have something done for you. So broadly speaking, learning or getting counsel runs closer to what you would expect from a consultant. Done for you is closer to outsourced. And every service provider and every client is unique. So people work with people they trust, who have expertise that they might need, and a style that feels comfortable in terms of engagement and a value proposition that resonates, that really ticks. So how does that land with you for a way to understand consultant versus outsource? It's not a hard black and white.
No, that makes absolute sense. And I think that is one of the things that is challenging when I do exploratory discussions with a potential new customer, because they don't quite understand. And I'll use the example of proposal development. There are so many companies out there who say, don't worry, we'll write and do everything for you on this proposal. You don't have to lift a finger. And I know they're what I call #GovCon grifters. Okay. I'm just putting it out there. I am shooting a bullet across the bow. Okay. For all these people who are like,
and you should,
I'm your magic bullet. I was like, fight me, take me on. I don't really care. What do I have to lose in industry if I like offend people? because that's the reason why they come with me. And so you're right. You do need to select a consultant who has similar ethics, morals, values, a style. I am not everyone's cup of tea. I am not a coddler. I am a coacher. I am, like I'm very direct. Why do you think we have a lot of military companies? Because I get them. I understand them. I swear like a sailor too. And so they appreciate the fact that there's a human who's there, who's consulting them. I'm not robotic. I'm not going through the motions without explaining things. And so that does make sense because I do a lot of coaching, on the job training. There's a lot of education in like what I do on any engagement. And so you are paying for the advice, you're paying for the experience, and then you're also paying for someone to kind of help you, but you have to help yourself, right? So help me to help you is kind of like what I always tell Henry. And so, like I can see that now is that the services kind of like, your legal, your accounting, HR, hiring or recruiting. Could I do that? Yes. Do I want to? No, because it bores the heck out of me. I don't have a mind for numbers. I was like, I don't know. You'll never see me like spout off like, any type of like some random factual number because I don't know them. I don't really particularly care to do that, but I'll explain to you how we got there or why it's important for you to kind of know that. And so that is a really good distinction to have. And it's good that we don't use them interchangeably or expect to use them internally and expect the same outcome.
A thought, Tan, as well. We've been talking about consultants, and it's so important to be able to know what you want from a consultant. There are a lot of consultants. This is in the category of the shot across the bow category of consultants that are printing reports from insert name of giant database. That's not a consultant, guys. If that's what you want, and you want a consultant who will print things from a database that you are not going to pay money for, and that's all you want, great. If you want coaching, if you know that you want your consultant to talk things through with you, not just give you reports, or if you want a discussion, but you want to get notes afterward, or you have to really know what you want your consultant to do, because consultants are all over that. There's no hard definition that a consultant never coaches or a coach never provides advice. But you have to know the mix of what you really need. And if you're not sure, then define it and have a touch point and be willing to adjust it. Have flexibility and some touch base built in early in the engagement, so you have some idea of where you're going, and you can fine tune it if the person you engage is somebody that you like, but it's not quite working the way you hoped. Give it time and be willing to work on the relationship both ways, so that you can, if it's possible that you've got the right person, you just needed to fine tune how you're working together, then you'll be able to retain a relationship that and expertise that's valuable to you.
Yeah. So I like to talk to new customers and to help them define what are the qualifications and the capabilities that they're looking for, and what is the outcome, because they get very wrapped up in titles. And so a lot of times I'll get a customer and it's like, I need a proposal manager. I was like, okay, well, tell me exactly what is it that you need, like what activities do you need performed? Where do you find that you have like the biggest gaps or the biggest struggles with? And 9 times out of 10, they don't need a proposal manager. They need a writer, and they need an editor, and they need someone to so it's multiple people. And so it's very easy in this industry to be like, oh, I need a BD person. Do you need a BD person? What are the BD activities? What are the qualifications and capabilities that you're looking for? And it turns out something to be very, very different, like in the end. So I think, a good takeaway of this is to really be able to understand before you speak to a consultant or an outsource service provider, to understand what activities you want and what do you want accomplished, and then discuss about their services and whether or not they're able to meet those. So,
Episode 28, Blueprint for Success. evolving roles, leadership responsibilities, and strategic planning. Segment 4, the foundation of success, the importance of an upfront capture-based blueprint.
Our next segment is about foundation of success, the importance of upfront capture-based blueprint. And this is a little bit more extensive of a conversation, but I know that you've written an article about without upfront capture-based, blueprint, you can't win in the GovCon. And I totally agree with you on this one. You argue that like a solid capture strategy is the backbone for a successful proposal. And being that we do 75% of our business here at Entellect is proposals. We've seen good proposals and bad proposals based on how good the capture is, and whether or not, they had a really sound approach to that. So can you, within the time that we have here, kind of walk us through
Sure.
an effective blueprint, capture blueprint elements, and why it's the foundation for winning in the competitive landscape?
Fair enough. So upfront, I don't like the term P-win or probability winning. It means nothing to me. What I care about is, have you done what you're supposed to do? Can you show the goodness of it and provide evidence of it, right? So for me in the very beginning let's just make the assumption that an opportunity's being bid, right? Do you know the 4 to 7 issues that are driving the procurement that's keeping the customer up at night? Do you know why they're issues, right? Anybody can identify an issue, but you know why. Do you know the priority of those issues? Do you know the customer psychographics? That means that you know who's an influencer, who's a decision maker, right? In terms of their their role, their personality type, who's a visionary, maybe the customer's an egotist. These are the kinds of things you want to know. What's the relationship towards your company? Are they an advocate, an adversary, agnostic? Do you know do you know the attributes of these people as they may relate to people on the evaluation panel, right? So the first thing is, have you done that type of analysis? Do you have an artifact of analysis to show that you've done it? And all good things in life are tested. Have you tested them with the customer?
Right.
Now that's the very beginning. Then we say, do you know the key factors that are necessary to address those issues? And key factors are not the solution, but to help frame it. So
Okay.
I look at them as like table stakes in poker. Anybody has to bring them to the table to address those issues. They may or may not appear in the requirements. So I look at them from a technical perspective, a management, a personnel perspective, and a corporate experience. And what we're really saying is, if say we're saying technical key factors, do you know it has to be brought to the table to address one or more of those issues that were identified, and why they're important to the customer? And again, the customer psychographics, as I explained before. And so you might identify 20, but what are the top 5 to 6? And sometimes, yes, they may appear in the requirements. Sometimes you might talk to the customer and educate the customer, and you realize, hey, that's really important. We need to get that in there.
Yeah.
And you shape the deal a little bit, and everybody's scratching their head, hey, how'd that get in there? And then sometimes the customer acknowledges them as being important, but they can't get them in there for politics of making a solicitation, as we know on the government side. But when they do see your response, they still recognize as being important, right?
Yeah.
So we look at that from a technical perspective, the top 5 or 6 technical key factors, 5 to 6 management, personnel, corporate experience. And those key factors align those issues in a many, many relationship. And the issues and key factors to me are what are driving the requirements, the hundreds or many more requirements. If you do not know the issues and key factors, and you haven't validated them with the customer, test them to the best of your human ability, then you shouldn't be bidding the opportunity. Okay? You have to know what's driving those requirements. Then if I have understanding issues and key factors, I can establish what I call, and is to be a notional winner benchmark. What are the attributes, say the top 10 of the ideal winner, which doesn't exist. Nothing is ideal in life. Even if you're incumbent, you are not the ideal winner. Because once you start to assume you're the ideal winner, you're on a slippery slope to a competitive loss. All right? So again, you're looking for as a benchmark the top 10 attributes to measure yourself against the ideal winner and why they're important. Again, always focusing on customer psychographics. That's an ideal looking at the notional winner benchmark. But then you have to look at yourself. What are those company internal challenges, conditions, and constraints that the company has that you want nobody to know about. Everybody has them, right? You know, those
No one wants
poor
to talk
habits at
about
home you
them.
want nobody.
Right. No one
Yes.
ever
Okay.
wants to talk about. I raise them all the time, and I was like, let's just be really honest and talk about them. They're like, oh, we don't have
Right.
any. It's like, okay,
Oh, you do. And they're not weaknesses
yeah,
per se. These are different. We don't pay our
yeah,
subs in time. So they don't want to team with us in a recompete, right? Or we're slow to pay our subs. Or we never honored our work share with them, right? They don't want to team with us, right? And our reputation has gotten out. Nobody wants to team with us because they know we've been a slow payer. You got to say it. Or we're screwing up our invoices for the past 3 years continually with the government. And they're frustrated with it. Or, we're just slow at recruiting. And so you have to have those hard discussions inside. Now, if I know the issues and key factors, I know the ideal winner, and if we had those hard discussions so we could try to address them, then we're equipped to start to do a competitive assessment. So if we look at any competitive assessment, we're really trying to figure out why our company or why not our company, or why a competitor, why not a competitor. So we're trying to look for those strategies where our strengths, where we can highlight them, and our weaknesses, where we can minimize them, or their strengths that we can neutralize them, or their weaknesses where we can exploit them, or counter how they might neutralize our weaknesses or neutralize our strengths or exploit our weaknesses, right? That's the essence of a competitive assessment. So very often in most companies, they'll start and stop with a SWOT analysis. To me, that's essential, but it's not sufficient. Because when we do a SWOT analysis, we have a certain mental model, and in that mental model, we're having a dialogue. But if we decide now, hey, let's also do a bidder comparison, where we could do an apples to apples comparison to anything we might be able to compare that's weighted. And then we're starting to have a different mental model, a different dialogue, and now we're identifying strengths and weaknesses for us and our competitors we might not have identified. And then when you do a Fortify Forces analysis, where if you look at the power position of the government or the incumbent or vendors you depend on or somebody trying to break in that's new or something that's just disruptive, those kind of influences, that's another type of mental model, allows you to think a different way. And then, of course,
yeah,
a black hat, right? So I tell people, based upon the amount of time that you have, at least do a SWOT. However, I encourage you to use more than one. You could do one, some, or all. The more, the better, because you're different dialogue, different mental models, different thinking, and you're identifying strengths and weaknesses. And years ago, we all know about strength-based budgeting, and we know that in my world, if you don't do the analyses, where are you getting the strengths from? Because if Peter and Tan think we're smart, which we're not the smartest people in the world, and we're sitting around a table and we're trying to identify strengths ahead of time, or we're trying to look for strengths in a knowledge repository manually or generative AI, okay, well, what's that based on? To me, the strengths come from analysis. And the reason that is because in my world, what I'm doing is I'm producing a digital thread. And I'll show this to you later on later on I'll share with you. But from that evaluation factor to the strength that scores those points, back to the strategies that it applies to, back to the requirements, back to the issues and key factors, that's digital thread. That's what I'm looking for. And that's why I'm starting to do these analyses. Now, if I did this, I could summarize from those analyses, why us or why not us. I'm in a position to qualify my discriminators. Now, people use the word differentiator and discriminator. They're not the same thing. You and I might be different, but there might be something about you that's completely discriminating, okay? And how I qualify discriminator means, one, the competition can't make the same claim. That's the first thing. That's where most people start and stop. They use that word unique. Essential but not sufficient. You have to know how it helps the customer, who it helps, why it's important to them, the benefit to get, ideally to quantify the benefit and or the risk it mitigates. And you have to substantiate a proof point. And all those things have to be true. It's an end statement to have a discriminator. And then, like I said, all good things in life are tested. You have to test that discriminator with the customer. And if you don't have at least one qualified discriminator, you shouldn't be priming the opportunity. So does that mean if I did all these analyses, I shouldn't be derive revenue from the opportunity? No. You shouldn't be priming it. It doesn't mean you won't be in a position to be a good sub, though, right? Good partner.
right.
Then you want to do a gap analysis because you want to know the gaps you have in capabilities, customer closeness, mission context, any kind of gap. Because when you're formulating your win strategy, those 7 or 8 high-level steps and how you're going to win that factor in your offering and the circumstances of your company, it's really like balancing a fulcrum, where I'm taking those 2 or 3 qualified discriminators I have, and those maybe 7 or 8 gaps I have, and we're all going to have big gaps, big kahuna gaps, right? And I'm looking for the sweet spot as I'm looking for those 7 or 8 statements, and I'm making those trades, trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
But when I have the caption manager saying on a slide, here's the win strategy. Okay, can you show me in a traceable, defensible, explainable manner with material evidence how you got to what's those 6 or 7 bolts on that slide? Most can't, regrettably. The facilitator will make sure that happens with them, because the facilitator is not going to be able to do the caption manager's job. The facilitator is like Tonto. He's like Robin to Batman, and Tonto to Lone Ranger. Now, the win strategy, we go to win themes. Win themes don't make you win. Government doesn't even know what they are. You'll never meet a government evaluator who says, those are great win themes you guys had. So we know themes in general are a feature benefit proof point. And we know win themes are meta themes, right? That transcend our offering of our value propositions. We might have 3 or 4 of those. And we know we might have many, many dozens, if not dozens, proposal themes. But if I have somebody writes on a whiteboard, these are our win themes. What's that mean? That means nothing to me. I want to know, how did you get to them? Show me, like in science and law and medicine, how you got to them, because that's what I do, right? That's what I do with my customers. Such that if your win theme's feature is not discriminating, it's a weak win theme. So if I qualified that discriminator, I already got a 2 for on my win themes, right? I can show you where I'm coming from. And then when we talk about the solution, particularly in a technological age, solution is not a technology. The government doesn't buy technology, right? They buy what I call quantifiable benefit realization, and they don't want risk. But to me, the solution is a set of things. It's an integrated set of things. It consists of the partners I put on my team, okay? Actually, before I talk about the integrated solution set, I skipped a step. Let me step back. When I did the competitive assessment with those techniques, and I qualified discriminators and did the gap analysis, in my world, I have created an inventory of dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of proposal strategy inputs. Not strategies yet, but strategy inputs. Yeah. And I break them into, I'll say, oh, this might be a strength, but it might be what I call a big G or little g. What's big G? Big G means it's the ghosting I could do to shape the deal before the government goes silent. Oh, I'm going to take Tan, our proposed program manager, to meet with the customer 2 times and let them see how she delivered a program, her lessons learned for a program of similar size, scope, and complexity, right? So they get to know Tan, know she's smart, know how she thinks, she's likable, they can work with her. That's a big G strategy, right? Little G strategy is going to be calling you out in your resumes or in your cameos, particular things about what you accomplished, right? How you got to deliver the program like 10% under the thresholds of the for cost, for example, or whatever the case may be. So little G strategies are what you materially do in a response. Well, these strategies to me are where you win deals, not the win themes, right? Because I use those in another discussion, like principles of an architecture. If you have bad software, it's because your architecture is bad. If your architecture is bad, it's because you haven't stayed true to the principles of the architecture. But it's proposal strategies where from the analyses, the thinking really comes into play now. Because now I'm going to sit there and say, oh, how are we going to address this strategy? Oh, we're going to make sure we get Tan in there to meet the customer 2 or 3 times. Plus, we want to make sure we call out these accomplishments, what Tan did to mitigate risk in a program in a response. And those are little G ones. So I use these strategies as the basis to build what I call the integrated solution set, which, as I start over again, the teaming partners I put on my team have a sound basis. Because you ever come across these companies and you say, why is this company on your team?
I ask that all the time. What's the value of this company here?
the past performances I'm putting forth, the key
Mhm.
people I'm putting forth, or I call the leadership team, right? The on-site leadership team, key people, the technical approach, which gives birth to technical solution, the management approach, the frameworks, methods, tools, and techniques or facilities, et cetera, to enable your approaches, your staffing solution, and your pricing strategy, price to win and basis of estimate. That's the solution. It's an integrated set of things, not just a technology. And everywhere down that integrated solution set is an opportunity to do two things. One is due diligence on your effort, and two is to squeeze out strengths. Squeeze out strengths, ideally quantifiable strengths, ideally strengths that might be discriminating or risks that are being mitigated. And what I'm doing is I'm building an inventory of strengths. Because if you don't have the strengths in advance of the writing, what are you writing to? Right? You can't get the
Yeah.
strengths unless you do the analyses. And in my
So
world,
that
what I'm creating is a digital. Go ahead, please go ahead.
Oh, no, no, no. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I just kind of wanted to kind of tie this all together because I can start to kind of see that there's like a whole building blocks of things that kind of continue to add and complement and to transition and move forward. And I think what is really ideally the theme of our discussion here is these activities don't happen in a vacuum. They don't just say, "Oh, I'm going to go do this," and I think that's the challenge and the issue sometimes with process. And again, I'm a very process person. I come from an analytical background. I've got a degree in chemistry and political science, and so my mind thinks in a chemistry, perspective. And so if you do this and you add this, and this is a chain reaction, and it's all kind of interconnected. And so you do need someone like your solution facilitator, like you've mentioned, and you do need a framework that is set up that as much as I love Shipley and as much as I loved how we're so, you know, tech savvy and process savvy, and that we've really kind of spent decades fine tuning and really kind of given credence to the Shipley approach and whatever process an organization might have adopted or tailored to their own specific needs, is that you lose the real reason why we're here, why we do that. And so that's why I think I'm so critical about formal training and training processes and training programs, is that you've got these incredibly intelligent people who are highly trained, but they don't understand why and where we do this. And so I think that that's like the underlying challenge with training people who maybe don't have the years of experience that you and I and many of us who are retiring right now in this industry have, is the ability to kind of field test and to really kind of execute and put some of this training and applications in place to kind of test our theories and kind of put trial balloons out there and to kind of talk about these things. And I think it's because we are such a instant gratification type of society anymore, and that no one wants to fail. And so, while there are going to be missteps, all while there are going to be certain strategies or theories or approaches that are just not going to fly, or or don't ever see the light of day, that doesn't mean that there wasn't value behind flushing them out, or at least having these discussions or having a process in place that kind of walks through the mechanics of unearthing, testing, validating, and maybe we're going to put that into, like our wheelbarrow and kind of continue move forward onto like the next phase. But there's still value in doing all of that.